Good afternoon and welcome to the Downtown Den. My name is Chris McKenna from Downtown in Business, and this afternoon I'm joined by Mick Coyle, who's journalist and host of Mental Health Monday. Afternoon, Mick.
Afternoon, Chris. Great to be here.
Good to have you. I'm Victoria Brown, who's MD of High Performance Consultancy and OneHR. Good afternoon, Vic.
Afternoon, Chris.
Yeah, well, it is Monday. It is the start of Mental Health Awareness Week. So we're going to have a conversation today about sort of what the past year has been like for everyone. Obviously very challenging for us all in many different ways. There's an announcement from government today at 5 p.m. on what the next stages of coming out of lockdown look like. The city centres are getting busier. People are returning to the office. So we'll kick off with that then, and the return to work. So from an employer's point of view, Victoria, what should we be looking at doing for people who potentially have been on furlough for over a year? They might have not been out of the house much. They might be feeling very nervous about what the outside world looks like now. So what can employers be doing to sort of make their staff feel safe?
I think prioritising mental health has never been more important than it is now. Having spoke to many of my clients, there is a massive challenge here that I think what's great and what's really great to see is that a lot of organisations are understanding and have the awareness of the challenge. And the point that you've just made there, Chris, is spot on. You know, you've got some people that have been furloughed for 12 months. So that's 12 months of not being in a routine. That's 12 months of not setting foot in a workplace. So there's lots of different individual differences here. You know, people feel differently about, some people are dying to get back into the office. Some people are terrified about that sort of first time that they've set foot into the office. So what we've been doing is working with clients around this and ensuring that communication is key. So it's depending on the size of your business, it's how you communicate to your people now to make sure that they understand, you know, what you put in place to ensure that it's COVID secure, you know, that they're going to feel safe in that environment. Thinking about equipment, you know, you've obviously got people that have been furloughed, but then you've got people that have worked from home for a long time. So, you know, I was talking to a client on Friday and they don't even know where all their equipment is, because I think people have just ran in, haven't they, taken chairs and taken all sorts of things from the office. And it's pretty desolate, to be honest. So it's looking at that, considering what you're going to do moving back. So for us, for example, we are going to sort of embark on a hybrid type model. We're probably never going to go back to what we were before. So we're probably going to have to double up on some of our equipment. You know, things like even sort of, you know, your risk assessments, you need to, a big concern for me over the last year, and forgive me if I've said this so many times before, but people haven't considered working from home very well as employers. So they've not really looked at risk assessments, and it all does link back to your mental health. You know, if you're not really sort of demonstrating that you care about your people, you're not making sure they've had sort of that DSE assessment at home. You know, there's we're getting a lot of reports on OneHR now on absence, where musculoskeletal problems, people are spending more time in the chiropractor than they've ever spent before. And, you know, HSE at the time had said that it was temporary. So everyone got away with not really doing enough.
Yeah.
I think by June, we're going to have to start to consider moving forward, aren't we? You know, like what does that look like now? If we are going to do a bit of both, we need to think about our people.
And I think a lot of companies will sort of use the hybrid model and people will work from home a bit more. So again, you know, if from my own experience, you tend to do these things all day. You don't get away from your desk. You're staring at your computer for a long time. What do employers need to do to manage that a lot better than for people who are maybe doing three days at home rather than in the office? And because you don't have that interaction as well, that human contact here as well. So what support can they put in place to make sure people are not missing the office too much?
I think that, speaking from experience from what we've done, one thing that we've really tried to do over the last 12 months is look at routine. So, you know, I've never been somebody that's been big on presenteeism or, you know, sort of a 9 to 5 type model, but we are very much about outputs. And I think what we've tried to do is put some level of routine in place for everyone. So I've probably been stricter than I've ever been around sort of like lunch, and saying, right, I want you to take your lunch, I want you to take that time, and particularly at home, go out for a walk if you can. If any of you follow us on sort of Twitter and things, you'll see we did the virtual, we climbed Everest. It's the only way I'm ever going to climb Everest, by the way. I was devastated when I got the medal because it said it was virtual. I wanted to try and figure that out. But I think we've been big on exercise. I know a lot of my clients have been big on exercise. A lot of people did sort of campaign Get Fit February, because I think the first lockdown, it was the summer, people were sort of out on the bikes, well-being was good in that regard. In the winter, it's been harder, so people have been stuck at, as you say, stuck at the desk. They haven't even got that ability to. I always find that when I get in the car and I travel to work, it's defining the difference between your home life and your work life. I get myself prepared for work, the same as when I leave work. Whereas at the moment, I'm leaving the kitchen and going into the front room, and then mum, I've gone from being MD to mum, and that I think everybody's really struggled with that divide, and it's that temptation, isn't it, all the time? Well, I'll just do another email now, and not having. So again, a lot of communication now, I think, and providing support to your people, and maybe adding, encouraging some sort of well-being events and opportunities for people actually to understand that it is okay to switch off.
Yeah. So Mick, I'll bring you in now. Have you been working from home for the past, God knows how long now it is?
Yeah.
So have you found it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, working from home? I'm looking that I've got a room which I can set aside as my work room. And then if the kids come home from school, they're downstairs and daddy's still at work. So I feel like I've been lucky in that regard. But how many people, last year when they were put on furlough were thinking, fine, if it's a few months and I'm getting, most of my pay, I can cope. Or how many people were working from home thinking, okay, I can get away with this for just a few weeks, and this homeschooling thing's a bit of a drag. But then it went on 6 weeks, then it went on 3 months, then it went on 4 months. Then the kids were kind of back in school, and then they were back in school, and they were back at home again. The whole thing kicked off again. And I think that's the thing where people suddenly think, well, when does this stop? And I think this is why, today's conversation is such a crucial one, because if this had lasted 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, people kind of would have gone, remember that funny time there was that illness that everyone got and we didn't have to go to work for a few months. But instead, we're talking now about a fundamental shift in people's relationship with work, a fundamental shift in people's relationship even within their own sort of home spaces, because we've had this period of time, which is longer than a year, where we've had to get our heads around routines, work-life balance, financial implications of everything that's been going on, and plan for a future which we can't at the moment really see. We don't really know what it's going to look like. And I think that's why, with workplaces who've been flexible have probably been the most successful, because they've been able to adapt to those changes over that period of time. And I think moving forward, those workplaces now that respond to the mental health need of their employees will be the ones who will have the most success. Because I think it's also worth saying that there's this period of time that we're in now whereby people are talking about when we go back to normal. Normal wasn't working for a lot of people. That idea of sitting in a traffic jam every single morning because you have to go to work, if it's just back to that, then we haven't really learned anything. If we talk about, productivity levels, if we talk about impact to the economy, mental health is already in pre-pandemic levels, was a huge factor in that 35 billion pounds, the cost to the economy of not being able to handle it properly. So it's about, I think, now investing. When people talk about building back better, they're not just talking about roads, they're not just talking about buildings. I think it's infrastructures within our workplaces and processes within a workplace that allows employees to move forward in a way which works for them and also works for the employer.
Yeah. And on that then, Vic, on the commute and people sort of stuck in traffic jams, have you been hearing from clients who potentially going to be more flexible on starting times and rather than, you know, we've all got to be in our desk at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and the trains around, the buses, the roads, and, you know, that you can start your day off the very wrong way, can't you? Because you're stressed before you've even got to your desk. Are you hearing much of that?
Oh yeah, massively. I mean, it's been interesting, and as Mick describes, then, like, I think we've had that many sort of like changes in opinion, and obviously we've been in lockdown. We haven't been in lockdown. We've had all these different sort of well, it's been a whirlwind, hasn't it? Last 12 months. And we've sort of, I've been full circle on this. So I've listened to clients at the beginning going, this is amazing. We're gonna get rid of our offices. We're never going to go back in them. And then we went through a period of time, probably about January, where a lot of clients were getting quite frustrated, you know, because I think communication was quite poor. Performance had dropped because people were feeling quite low. And it was like, right, no, that's it. Everyone's coming back into the workplace. And then I'm finding now that people are thinking about just being more flexible. So when we talk about flexible sort of working in the past, it has been around sort of a request made, you know, very formal process, whereas we're getting a lot of requests now from our clients looking at those policies and, as you say, sort of changing, giving people that ability, you know, like the good old flexi time, giving people the ability to come in at different times now, to work from home on certain days, because people lost so many hours to the commute. You know the same, Chris, because you and I both travel to Manchester. I mean, at the moment it's great because it feels like you're on a first class train, doesn't it? But you know, the amount of hours that you used to lose to that train, not even the travel, but just sort of trying to get on the train, and then you couldn't get a seat. And it would be great, I think, if we can be more flexible in our approach moving forward.
Anyone who stood on platform 14 at Piccadilly at rush hour will feel our pain. It's absolutely horrendous. I don't miss that at all. But that's good to hear, you know, that people are, because I think, you know, when people are looking for jobs in the future, these are the types of things they'll be looking at. You know, they'll want flexible working hours. They'll want nice office space. Because again, you know, our offices are great, and, you know, the office has changed massively, hasn't it, in the last sort of 10, 15 years. But I suppose companies are going to have to look at that as well, aren't they? You know, what's in their office. If it's just desks, chairs and computers, well, actually, it's not a very fun environment to work, is it? So, yeah, lots of interesting things to come up over the coming months, I'm sure. So we'll just move on then to sort of, obviously it is Mental Health Awareness Week. And again, over the years, awareness of this has massively grown, in my opinion. But how do we get people to talk about this, Mick? Because I do still feel, you know, people will feel uncomfortable mentioning their mental well-being, whether that be with family, friends, but, you know, especially maybe in the workplace. So what can we do to better communicate with people that it is okay to open up about these things?
I think first and foremost, you know, there's lots of processes in place now with mental health training sort of programs that are available that can come into your workplace that can sort of almost like set a standard for what that conversation might look like, what it might sound like. And I think if you've not done that as a workplace, you're behind the curve, and actually you're doing yourself a disservice to make that small investment to understand what a mental health concern might look like, how it might present itself, and then how you might respond. From a business point of view, it makes absolute sense, because it puts a stop to a whole host of further problems down the line, which otherwise go either undiagnosed or unexplored, that might potentially cause you problems. And I think that conversation around mental health has opened up, you know, hugely. I started the Mental Health Monday program at the start of 2017. And at the time, people said, well, who's going to talk to you on the radio about mental health? This week, we've done episode 202, and I was speaking to Katie Piper, who's like a celebrity, about the impact of the pandemic and how we're all going to move forward. So you think, well, actually, there's a normalization that has taken place in that time that allows people, particularly young people, to be able to express themselves. Now, I think it's still very much a generational thing. There is very much still a keep calm and carry on, man up culture within all aspects of society. And I think we need to move away from it. But I think we almost have to set the rules for that ourselves. So if you work within a workplace, you have that conversation. You don't just say, why is that paper not on my desk? Why is that, you know, meeting been unattended? It's how are you feeling at the moment? Give me a score. Give me a score mark, a mark out of 10 as to how you're feeling in yourself at the moment. Because sometimes people say, "How are you?" and people respond, "I'm fine." And that is a standard workplace thing, isn't it? "How was your weekend?" "Yeah, fine." "What'd you get up to?" "I noticed you've not been yourself recently. Is there anything sort of playing on your mind?" "I noticed you cancelled a couple of meetings last week. Is there anything that you want to have a chat about?" "I tell you what, forget that meeting this morning. Let's me and you go and grab a coffee. Let's just go and have a chat about absolutely nothing." Those sorts of things within a workplace, I think, are the future. But also, I think they also represent a manager who knows what they're talking about, a manager who has got empathy, and also a manager who trusts their staff. I think so much of what people have done in the past, Vic mentioned, the idea of if you apply to work from home, it's why? What's at home? What's going on? If we've got empathy to anything we've experienced in the last year, we know what's at home. We completely understand, and we should totally understand that people will want to take the steps. And if we don't trust them, why did we hire them in the first place? That's a reflection on a manager, isn't it? If they don't trust somebody to do their job. So I think we've got to bear all of those things in mind. But that mental health training, I think, has got to be there now, because that first aid training sign of who to call if you break your, if you cut your finger, it's in every workplace. You've got builders going back into work. They all put on a high vis jacket. They all put on the steel cap boots, and they all put on the hard hat. But actually, if you're working as a builder within a construction site, you're in the profession which is the most likely to have suicidal thoughts. Now, how have you protected your staff from that? And these are the sorts of questions that you've got to think about. It's the physical and mental health parity. It's all the steps you take around physical first aid to mental first aid, knowing that if something does happen, you're prepared, you know what you're doing, and you can move forward in a progressive way, rather than it being something you don't deal with, then suddenly an incident or a series of incidents hit, and you've suddenly got to take on all this information. If you get it beforehand, you've already got the processes in place, you move forward, and you move forward together.
And Victoria, there are some companies talking about, starting mental health days, and you mentioned earlier, routine is key. What have you been advising your clients then on how to sort of get their employees to open up and talk to each other?
It's interesting, isn't it? I think in terms of, I was looking before this webinar around sort of what stats were, which was interesting in terms of like 1 in 4 of us apparently will have a mental health problem within 12-month periods. So, that's a significant number, and that's probably what's reported right now. So when I talk to my clients, we say, we're responsible to empower people to feel comfortable to be able to talk about, how they're feeling. And Nick's point then was great. How often do we say, you go, "How are you?" "I'm great." And we're actually thinking, "I'm not great at all." So we do that every meeting that we have now. We start it by saying, "Out of 10, how are you feeling today?" And it's brilliant. It's just such a subtle change. It's made all the difference. I think it's a great idea, Mick. But I think for one of my concerns sometimes is that, I suppose, A, the lack of awareness from employers, but B, them being concerned about what they need to do, and we're responsible to signpost people, to the support that they need. So I always do recommend to my clients that they go look at Mind, which is a charity. They have something called Sign the Pledge. It's free to do. You can go on, you can sign up as an employee, but you can sign up as an employer as well. And it's just a commitment that you then make as an organisation to how you're going to help improve, raising that awareness, having that ability and that support to signpost people to the right places. A lot of my clients have gone on first aid training now, mental health aid training. Right away I say first aid because it's the same, isn't it? As we've just talked about then, it's easy enough if you've got a bandage on your arm to say, like, there's something wrong, but if you're not feeling yourself, unless you physically put a sign on your head, no one knows. So it's having that ability and people within your organisation that actually someone feels comfortable to be able to say, "I just don't feel right." I know you mentioned then about that sort of the mental health, sick days and things. And I think what we're trying to do as HR professionals and as employers is just remove that stigma. so you can phone someone and say, I've got a cold, but people feel uncomfortable to phone up and say, I just don't feel myself right now. I don't know what it is. I just don't feel myself. So it is about training and removing that ignorance from organizations, so people do feel comfortable and have that ability to say, and the great thing about it is it's, a problem shared is a problem halved, and there is so much help out there. You don't have to be a big organization and have a big EAP system. There's loads of sort of free support. As employers, you've got the Hub of Hope, which is a great app as well, available in your area to support you. So I think, my initial sort of suggestion to employers would be to go on Mind and sign that pledge.
Great. And then we'll just move on then to something that we all use a lot for work purposes, and something that can impact on people's mental health massively, which is social media. Can be used for good, obviously, but sometimes you do think, do the negatives outweigh the positives? So where do you stand on it, Mick, and the use of social media? And a lot of people get their news from there these days. A lot of the news is sort of doom and gloom. So how would you suggest people manage that and their use of their time, and so they're not getting impacted too much by social media?
So I made a deliberate step a couple of years ago to be proactive around how I was going to use social media, purely because I'd been aware and became aware that I'd become a thumb scroller. And that wasn't that I was active on social media. That was just, I was on social media. And it wasn't that my life was on social media. It's just that it was always on in the background. So I basically decided, well, I'm going to switch off Facebook. Deleted Instagram, because I think Instagram was the one where you can just scroll forever and you never stop scrolling. And Twitter, I very much used to make it useful for myself. And you can have useful for work, but you can have useful for your home life as well. And sometimes people say things like, "Oh, make sure you follow people who've got political agreements, political opinions that you disagree with." I would say, well, don't. Just be aware that they're out there, but you don't have to be looking at things that are going to upset you or rile you or spark some, debate in your own mind every single day. I think social media has got to a very, very difficult sort of position. And I think I always liken it back to the first series of Big Brother, right? Whereby during the 80s and 90s, like TV was just TV and you watched TV. And if you didn't like someone, you'd hope the character would get their comeuppance. She'd have like the Who Shot JR kind of moment. Whereas when Big Brother started, it changed, and it changed to, if you don't like this thing, you shouldn't have to put up with it anymore. Call this number now and we'll get rid of it for you. And I think that culture embedded itself through various different things into sort of society as a whole. Whereas now we have this thing, don't we? And it exists almost exactly on social media in a way like nowhere else, where if you don't like something, there's almost this thing of, right, well, we'll get rid of it then. If you let's try and cancel this individual, let's try and mock them or bring them down. Let's try and bully them. Let's try and denounce this person so that they don't exist anymore. Because if they don't agree with you, why should you have to put up with it? In the same way you'd vote for, I was going to say Craig, but he was good. We wanted him to win. Whoever it was on Big Brother that we wanted to get rid of. That empowered us to kind of go, if you don't like something, you don't have to put up with it anymore. And your opinion is the most important thing. What matters is what you think about it, not what anyone else thinks about it. I think that became really, really dangerous in terms of that opinion thing. And I think the other aspect, and I mentioned Instagram before, is your brain is physically looking for these hits, these hits of chemicals that you get when somebody likes something, somebody retweets something, somebody puts a heart or a comment. Your brain is doing it, is looking for that. And social media is a perfect place to find it. But it's weird because you can also go and find it by doing a jigsaw. You get the same hit chemically in your brain by finding a piece that fits into a jigsaw than you do from seeing a like on social media. But one of them is a bloke at home doing a jigsaw. The other is potentially ruining someone's day, potentially ruining someone's life, encouraging them to do all the wrong things. And I think we need to be mindful of that as to what is going on social media. You know, what are we using it for? If it's just going on in the background, well, why do we need to do that? And if you do need to do that, is there not another way of finding that in your life? And I'm not saying we should all be doing jigsaws, but I think the world would be a better place if maybe we're all doing jigsaws. And I think you've got to find that balance, but you've got to proactively look for that balance and find out what it is that you use social media for. If you like gardening, follow a load of great, gardening blogs and posts and things like that. You'll find loads of information. If you love seeing people out about in town, follow loads of different like restaurants and things like that. That's great. But at the same time, that restaurant is not going to go, here's all the bad reviews we had this week. Here's all the people who got soaking wet and freezing when the roof blew off, in 40-mile-an-hour winds outside. They're going to put the good stuff on as well. So it's about knowing that, understanding that, and then using it for what we want to use it for.
I actually did take up jigsaws during the second lockdown. I took some stick in the office, actually. Social media.
It was because it was like princess.
It was actually, I should mention it, you would have known. Disney princess, and I said it was for my daughters. But on sticking with social media then, Vic, do you advise, your clients and yourselves give training and how to not fall into those rabbit holes where you sat on the couch at 8 o'clock at night just scroll? You don't even read after it, do you? Is the training in place that you've done, or what would you recommend?
It's hard, isn't it? Because for years now, social media, a lot of the time, is at the crux of so many disciplinaries, where things have gone wrong. You can put social media policies together, you can do training, but it's very, very hard to sort of, clearly, to control or educate sometimes people around good sort of practices. And I think that the challenge, and having sort of two girls myself and one being a teenager, it's that challenge, isn't it, now, of that it's there and it's out, it's been written down. So I think, we all have been in a time where we didn't have phones, we didn't need them. So whilst I know, and I am guilty as well of falling into some bad habits now, I do know that life can go on without one. Whereas like my 13-year-old daughter cannot imagine life without a phone. She thinks that we lived in the dark ages, that we didn't have them. She's like, how did you meet people at the right time? It's like, by having a watch, and you just
there was nothing quite like that, was there? Going out to the pub and forgetting the time or forgetting the pub, and then sitting down at like 7 o'clock looking around going, and what you'd have to do then, you'd then have to go to the other pub you think they probably might be, and then you'd wait around, and then if they didn't come, you just get on the bus and go home. That was the end of the night.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it is a challenge, isn't it? In terms of if they do say something to one another on a Friday. I'm talking about school children at the moment, but they'll say something on Friday on social media, and then they think about that, it festers all over the weekends, and then it becomes a bigger problem on the Monday. Now, whilst I'm talking about teenage girls, that's still a challenge for the employer. That is still happening. There's a lot of sort of cyberbullying that goes on, trolling, things that happen that are in the workplace, and it's all around social media. So yeah, we do really encourage sort of our clients to have a good social media policy in place and some education. And if we can link it to nice things, like, to Mick's point, I think I'm going to set up a jigsaw business now, but I don't know, send it out, encouraging people to do things, and we've talked about before about well-being, and just like ditch the phone. Yeah. I know as a family we do that, at the dinner table, we will not have a phone at that dinner table, because I think we're conscious as well of the fact that if we're sort of trying to encourage our children not to use the phones and social media, then we're not great ambassadors if we're sat there sort of looking at things. So it's tough. It's a big challenge, but particularly for this younger generation that who don't know any difference.
Yeah, it is, because your phone has everything now, doesn't it? It's email, social media, WhatsApp. It's everything there on one device. So it is tough, but it is crucial that we do have some downtime from it. I've just put time limits on my so it kicks me out after a certain amount of time, which is quite useful. And you just mentioned well-being then, and I'm going to bring Danny Woodworth into the conversation shortly, but you know, it is massively linked, isn't it? You know, if we're physically in good shape and exercising, then mentally we tend to feel better. And I think some people might view, you know, physical exercise as, oh, I've got to run a 10K, or it's not that, is it, Mick? You know, just you mentioned earlier, getting out at lunchtime for a walk or just clearing your head. So how important is that we do that?
I think one of the unintended consequences of lockdown was that the government accidentally, for the first time ever, mandated that everybody should leave their house for an hour every day to exercise. And I don't think they meant that in a way of, wouldn't it be good if everybody exercised for an hour a day? But it just so happened that people then started to think, right, I've got an hour where I need to go for that walk down by the canal, walk through your local park, whatever it is. And I think that's one of those habits which, if anything, they should keep that rule the same. They should, you know, they changed the rules around lockdown. They should always have that in, that at any point, everybody should, for 1 hour a day, have a mandated time to go and do some physical exercise. And you could build that into sort of, you know, gyms and exercise bike, spin class type like events. But also you could build that into workplaces with, you know, the dinner hour. Make sure half of it is spent outside. Make sure there's a space with a bit of greenery. Make sure, you know, there are at least plants in the office, so there's a sense of a bit of nature and natural world outside, because we all feel better, not necessarily when we're thinking about doing it or even when we're doing it, but we all feel once we've done it, like, thank goodness I did that. I feel better for having done that. And I think as much as we can build that into all aspects of our lives, I think absolutely that's something we can definitely move forward, because physical health and mental health are very much interlinked, you know. And I think if we don't you know, decompress and defragment our brains through good sleep and from looking away from a screen, then it sets up problems, maybe not today or tomorrow, but if you don't leave the house for a week, or if you don't stop looking at your phone for 3 or 4 days, you start to notice you start to feel a little bit more, just a bit, you start to maybe get a little bit snappier with your kids or with your partner. And then that's one of the measures in it when we come to mental health training that people can recognize. Why do you feel like that? Well, I have been working too many long hours. I haven't been away from a screen. I haven't been doing exercise. I've been drinking too much coffee late at night to keep awake, which means I'm not sleeping for 8 hours every night. And we're not getting that whole life experience, which we've got to have positive mental health. And physical health is an absolutely crucial part of that.
Yeah. And Vic, you mentioned you did the virtual climb of Mount Everest. Was that something you did because of lockdown? Is it something you've incorporated previously? Will it continue that you keep your staff active?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. We did the virtual because of lockdown, and I did have quite a lot of concerns with my people. It's hard because it was on Zoom or on Teams, but you notice things, don't you? As Mick said before, sometimes it's about not just saying how are you today, we have a lot of one-to-ones, a lot of kids. But I've noticed things around like people not having the cameras on, when we've done sort of a team meeting, just even the way they were sort of dressed and just not in a great place. And a lot of my team really struggled in this final lockdown, as as we all did. So we did it as a way to just, we pulled together, we sort of signed everyone up and we put people in different teams. We made it a bit of fun, a bit of competition. Whichever team got to top first, they could have a nice meal when sort of we could again. And people really enjoyed it, and it was good actually, because there was a few team members that said that they would never have done it otherwise. So they wouldn't. It was just, you just had to track your steps, and every day you'd sort of. I tried to get my children involved, and they were not interested. It was like, come on, we're climbing Everest. They were like, don't want to, mummy. Not interested. But yeah, it was great, and it's something that we definitely will continue to do. We're talking about doing some like mindfulness sessions and things as well now, so really keeping well-being on the agenda moving forward.
Yeah, I don't want to climb Everest. I don't want to climb. I'm doing this jigsaw. Leave me alone.
Yeah, our offices are with Bruntwood Works, and they set something up called Bruntwood Works Out on Strava. And it was a great, well, it's still going. It's a great community, and actually it brings out the competitive edge in you because there's a league table, and I don't want to be near the bottom. So it made me get out and run. So that was a great initiative. So I'm just going to bring Danny Woodworth in now from Merseyside Sports Partnerships. So Danny, if you're there. Heather, have we got Danny? No? Okay. Let's have a look at his end. I'm not sure where Danny is or where Heather is, so we'll see if we...
He's just messaged to say he is here.
Heather, can we bring Danny into the screen? No? I'm not sure. Yeah, well, if we can't get Danny, I know he is there, but we're trying to get you on the screen, Danny. I'm not sure what's going on there. But the Merseyside Sports Partnerships are working with businesses across Merseyside to do just that, get people moving, keep people active. You know, it isn't, you know, the best to be sitting at a desk 9 till 5 all day. So yeah, a great initiative and something we'll be sharing to our downtown members and the wider business community.
I think it's to be said. I was just going to say, Chris, just on that, there was a report out which looked at the impact of not dealing with mental health on workplaces. I mentioned the figure before, 35 billion quid. I think the total amount for the economy is more than 100 billion pounds a year. But there was a stat that said that when it comes to work-based mental health promotion, an investment by a business of about £40,000 returned something like £320,000 within 12 months. And that was based on the fact that if you take steps to engage with your workforce around the issues that we've talked about today, stress, maybe anxiety, physical fitness, absenteeism, presenteeism, if you deal with that, what you do is you take away 1,000,001 different problems that you'd have to deal with anyway down the line, and you've created an environment which means that people's productivity levels don't slump when they're experiencing an issue, because you've got those processes in place. So actually, when we talk about, you know, the guys there from the sports partnership, if you can make a connection with an organization like that, it might feel like you're making an investment which isn't something directly related to what you're doing. But I'd urge you to sort of look at the stats around that and actually see what pathways and benefits that would open up for the future, because it would mean that just a small amount of potential outlay reaps a much wider benefit and saves you a whole heap of hassle down the line.
Yeah, as I say, it's something we'll be sharing with our members and something we'll be getting. Oh, here he is. There's Danny. Hi, Danny, you okay?
Hello. Hi, Chris. You all right?
Yeah, very well. Yeah, just want to expand a bit on what you guys are up to.
Yeah, definitely. And do you know what, Mick? You've basically done my job for me there. You pitched it perfectly. Agree with absolutely everything you've said, maybe just apart from the jigsaws. But yeah, everything else was...
I'll persuade you. Yeah, don't worry, Danny. I'll persuade you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. So my name's Danny. I work for a company called MSP, or Merseyside Sports Partnership. And over the last couple of years, we've supported over 200 organisations across Merseyside to try to change the culture, to make them a little bit more active. I think even the most resilient person over the last 12 months has struggled with the mental health. There's a lot of things that have been taken away from us. There's a lot of things that have gone out of our control. And sometimes we can't do anything about that. But what we can do is kind of change the way that we think, feel and behave about the things that happen to us. And I guess what we're advocating is that we use physical activity as a tool to help us do that. So to manage the stress and the anxiety that comes up on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes when I talk about physical activity, people kind of like run for the hills because they think about dressing up in lycra, they think about running a marathon, going on a 50-mile bike ride, and that's kind of like the last thing that we're trying to promote. So it's all about, like we've already said before, going for a 10-minute walk on your dinner, maybe parking a little bit further away from the office, just so you kind of like give yourselves a bit more of a headspace to think before you go in and after you come back. Taking the stairs instead of the lift, those kind of like really, really simple messages. I guess kind of like, so we've got an initiative that's been funded by Liverpool City Council and Liverpool CCG. that's called Liverpool Active Workplaces. What it is a free support package for any organisation in Liverpool. So it doesn't matter whether you've got 10,000 staff, 10 staff, 2 staff, it's for absolutely anybody, where we've got some free training, resources. We've got a conference next week where you can hear from other Liverpool organisations about what they've done with physical activity. And we've got a free staff challenge that starts on the 1st of June as well. So I think we've already had about 130 organisations from across Liverpool that have signed up, and we're encouraging more to get involved as well. I've lost my train of thought, sorry. So yeah, I guess kind of like 3 things to take away is to use physical activity as a tool to boost your own health and well-being, even if it is just like going out for a walk or something like that. Using it as a tool if you are a line manager to support the people that you look after as well. So one thing in particular that a lot of organisations that we've worked with have done really effectively, kind of like over the last 3 years, is to do their appraisals or their supervisions or their one-to-ones as walking meetings. And it's not only good for your well-being and for the person that you line manager's well-being, but we've had a lot of people report back that it's really helped them to open up and be a little bit more honest with the person that line manages them as well. Just because they're kind of like they're physically getting away from that office environment, from maybe kind of like, you know, the corporate-y, clinically type environment. So that's kind of like a really, really positive thing that we've seen organisations do. And I guess, like Mick said before as well, there's lots of support out there to help your organisation. So we can definitely help in terms of physical activity. And I'll post the link in the chat box as well to the programme that you can all sign up to.
Great, thanks for that, Danny. And we'll get that out to our members as well. Yeah, well, this has been great. You know, I've picked up a lot today. I'm sure people listening and will have. It is for the week though, Mick. So what's your plans for the rest of Mental Health Awareness Week?
Yeah, I sometimes feel a little bit like, because I do mental health all the time, the Awareness Week isn't necessarily, you know, something where I do specific things for it. But I've got this week's episode of Mental Health Monday is out today. Katie Piper's my guest. And actually, we're talking about that. There's, I think there's a stat that says 1 in 5 people actually don't want lockdown to end, because of some of the more positive things they've taken from it. And that might be new hobbies, new activities, maybe making a little bit of time for themselves. She's encouraging people to make half an hour available to themselves every day, and to deliberately be selfish with your time. I think we always make a big thing of it, don't we, though? We can never have time for ourselves because that's selfish. But it's like when, you know, when the plane starts to fall out of the sky, put on your own, you know, oxygen mask first before you help other people. Because if you're not in a good place to help, if they come to you for help and you're not able to offer that, that potentially causes a problem down the line. So there's that conversation. Got a nice video as well up on social media today at Mr. Mick Coyle, which is just generally talking about what mental health is. Because I think sometimes when it comes to conversations around mental health, there's a presumption that you either know everything or you know absolutely nothing. But all the time, people are coming on board to what mental health is all about. And young people get really switched onto this straight away, but there are generations and generations of people who've never thought of mental health or never even considered what mental health actually might mean to them. So that's a little sort of starter for 10, if you like, because the last thing we want to do with this is try and drag everybody, you know, up a mountain. Oh, here we go again. Up a mountain on something they don't know or understand. I think we've always got to have those ins that 1 in 4 people will have a mental health problem in the next year, but everybody has mental health. And if something goes wrong for you or someone you know or care about, you need to know what to do. These processes, these tips, listening to these sorts of advice, following hashtags on social media that promote positive things can all help educate you further and take you to a much better place.
Great. Thanks, Mick. And Victoria, if there is anyone watching, any business owners with any concerns, are you happy for them to get in touch with yourselves and your team?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have something called the People Hub as well, which we've set up for employers and HR sort of professionals, just a community that come together. And we had a session last week just talking around this topic. So if anybody does want to join, more than welcome. I can pop the details in the chat.
Marvellous. Well, thanks a lot for joining me this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you everyone for listening in. And yes, I shall see you all shortly.
If you enjoyed that video, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel on the link below and be among the first to get to listen to all the latest interviews through the Downtown Den.